In the ancient Mediterranean, there was an island smaller than many modern cities. It had no large army, no vast farmland, no powerful navy. Yet at its peak, it could process thousands of human beings in a single day. Not grain, not silver, not weapons. People. Men captured from war, children taken from villages, women seized from coastal homes before sunrise. Within weeks, a free person could become inventory, logged, inspected, priced, sold. This was not the result of chaos. It was the result of policy, a decision in Rome, a shift in trade routes, the removal of naval patrols, the promise of tax-free commerce. From these choices, a system formed. Pirates captured, merchants transported, officials recorded, buyers inspected, the state collected revenue. No single part created the machine, but together, they made it efficient. Delos had once been a sacred island. Pilgrims believed gods were born there. Temples stood above the harbor. Offerings filled its treasury. Then trade replaced worship, and worship was replaced by volume. Ships arrived carrying human cargo. Warehouses filled. Auctions ran daily. The harbor became a transfer point between violence and ownership. What happened on Delos was not unique because it was cruel. It was unique because it was organized. And once organization replaces outrage, a market can do what armies alone cannot. It can turn suffering into routine. This is the story of how one small island became the center of that routine. Stay with us till the end for valuable insights. Like, subscribe, and share to support the channel. Before Delos became known for volume, it was known for faith. For centuries, the island held religious importance in the Greek world. Pilgrims traveled across the sea to visit its temples. They believed the god Apollo had been born there. Offerings filled sacred buildings. Treasuries stored wealth given in devotion. The island's identity was tied to worship. But geography does not remain neutral. Delos sat in the center of important sea routes. Ships traveling between Greece, Asia Minor, and Italy often passed near its shores. Trade moved naturally through this part of the Aegean Sea. Even when the island focused on religion, merchants still noticed its position. Location creates opportunity. In 166 BC, Rome made a political decision that changed the island's direction. After the Third Macedonian War, Rome punished the island of Rhodes for uncertain loyalty. Rhodes had controlled much of the eastern Mediterranean trade. Its navy protected shipping lanes. Its harbors collected customs duties. Those taxes funded patrols that reduced piracy. Rome did not attack Rhodes directly. Instead, Rome redirected commerce. The Senate declared Delos a free port. No customs duties. No import taxes. Merchants could unload goods without paying fees. The policy was simple. The effect was immediate. Ships that once docked in Rhodian ports changed course. Trade shifted to Delos. Within a year, Rhodes lost most of its harbor revenue. With less income, its naval patrols weakened. Pirate activity increased across the eastern Mediterranean. The decision appeared economic. But economics reshapes power. As piracy grew, captives increased. Pirate fleets operated from hidden coastal bases along Asia Minor. They attacked merchant vessels. They raided coastal settlements at dawn. They did not capture people randomly. They targeted areas with weak defenses and easy escape routes by sea. They needed markets. Delos provided one. The island was administered by Athens, but Roman influence remained strong. Officials did not ask many questions about the origin of goods arriving in the harbor. There were no tariffs on human cargo. There was no strong investigation into how captives were obtained. Trade buildings expanded near the port. Large colonnaded structures appeared. Storage facilities increased in size. Open spaces near the harbor became suitable for auctions. Temporary housing developed for merchants who stayed during trading seasons. The island's population rose to nearly 30,000. This number was far greater than the land could support through farming alone. Food had to be imported constantly. Delos was no longer sustained by agriculture or pilgrimage. It was sustained by exchange. At first, goods remained traditional: grain, oil, wine, timber, textiles. But gradually, another type of cargo became more common. Ships arrived carrying people. Some were prisoners from wars. Others were taken during pirate raids. Women, children, and men arrived together. The infrastructure built for commerce adapted easily. Warehouses held captives before sale. Open courtyards allowed inspection. Record keepers documented transactions. Brokers negotiated prices. Taxes were collected on each sale. The island did not announce itself as a slave capital. It simply allowed the system to grow. No large speech declared the change. No ceremony marked the transformation. Policy created incentive. Incentive created movement. Movement created volume. Worship declined. Trade expanded. And in that expansion, Delos discovered a new purpose. One that required a constant supply of human beings. A market cannot exist without supply. Delos did not capture people itself. The island did not send soldiers into villages. It did not organize raids. Its role was different. It received. The supply came from the sea. Along the southern coast of Asia Minor, pirate fleets operated from narrow inlets and rocky harbors. Their ships were fast and light. They did not seek open battle. They targeted weakness. Slow merchant vessels. Poorly defended coastal settlements. Fishing villages without walls. These attacks followed patterns. Grain ships traveling from Egypt to Italy moved slowly when fully loaded. Pirates studied these routes. They attacked at dawn or near dusk, when visibility was limited. Crew members were killed if they resisted. Survivors were restrained. Cargo was seized. Ships were sometimes resold. But the most valuable cargo was human. Coastal raids were even more efficient. Villages near the shore depended on fishing and small trade. They had no large garrisons. A pirate fleet could arrive before sunrise, surround the settlement, and leave within hours. Those who tried to escape into the hills were often caught. Fires were sometimes set, not to destroy completely, but to create confusion. Women and children were preferred targets. Adult men could resist. They could fight. They could organize rebellion later. Women and children were easier to transport and easier to sell. Young women often commanded higher prices. Buyers sought domestic workers, household servants, and other roles that required physical strength or obedience. This was not uncontrolled violence. It was organized acquisition. Warfare provided another stream of supply. When Rome or other powers conquered a city, captives were taken in large numbers. Men of fighting age were often executed. The rest were sold. Prisoners of war became legal slaves under Roman law. The law defined their status. It allowed their sale without dispute. From the point of capture, the journey began. Captives were moved quickly to coastal holding points. They were placed in temporary enclosures while ships were prepared. Food was minimal. Water was rationed. Those who became ill were considered losses. Dealers calculated these losses as part of business costs. Ships carrying captives were not designed for comfort. People were confined below deck. Movement was restricted. Air was limited. Disease spread easily. If a voyage lasted several days, some did not survive. Their bodies were removed without ceremony. Upon arrival at Delos, the harbor handled this traffic with routine efficiency. Ships docked regularly. Captives were unloaded under supervision. Brokers and agents met vessels upon arrival. Numbers were recorded. Groups were separated based on age and sex. Temporary holding areas stood near the port. These were not permanent prisons. They were processing spaces. Wooden barriers, iron chains, guarded enclosures. Captives waited there until auction day. The island did not ask how they had been taken. Pirates, war captains, and dealers all found willing buyers. The system worked because each part depended on the other. Pirates needed markets. Merchants needed supply. Landowners needed labor. Officials collected taxes. Rome benefited from stability and cheap workforce expansion. No single decision forced the trade to expand, but no authority moved strongly to stop it. As long as ships continued arriving, Delos continued functioning, and the sea continued delivering. When captives arrived, the island treated them like ordinary goods. Warehouses lined the harbor. Open courtyards connected them. Merchants and brokers had clear procedures. Numbers were recorded. Health was noted. Age, strength, and skills were documented. Nothing was left to chance. The first step was inspection. Captives were sorted. Women, men, and children were grouped separately. Traders assessed physical condition. Any injuries or illnesses were noted. Captives captured from foreign lands were sometimes marked with chalk or other symbols to show origin. This helped buyers identify who they were purchasing and what risks were involved. Auction spaces were carefully organized. Large open buildings allowed buyers to move freely. Circular areas were designed to display captives for easy viewing. Buyers could walk around, inspect limbs, and ask questions. Traders presented the people in ways that emphasized their abilities. Every detail affected price. For women, the process was different and invasive. Buyers often examined them for physical fitness and reproductive potential. Any skill or training, household, textile work, or medical knowledge was recorded. Physical appearance also affected value. Those captured locally or far away were treated the same way, as products to be appraised, ranked, and sold. Auctions were not chaotic. They followed rules. The auctioneer controlled the process. Each captive was presented systematically. Bids were made openly. Prices reflected age, health, origin, and skills. Legal protections existed for buyers. If undisclosed defects appeared within a certain period, the purchase could be reversed. This encouraged traders to record some information accurately. Temporary housing surrounded the auction areas. Traders, brokers, and buyers often stayed for weeks. They had sleeping quarters, offices, and storage spaces. The island's economy adapted. Food, supplies, and services were necessary to support the people facilitating the trade. The population of Delos swelled during trading seasons. Many merchants arrived from across the Mediterranean: Greeks, Romans, Phoenicians, Syrians, Egyptians. The infrastructure grew to meet the volume. Roads were cleared, docks expanded, warehouses reinforced. The harbor was always active. Ships came and went daily. What made Delos different was efficiency. Historical records suggest that thousands of captives could be processed each day. Whether or not the number is exact, the claim shows the scale. The island became a central hub, connecting pirates, merchants, and buyers from across the Mediterranean. Delos did not force people to sell slaves. It did not need to. Economic incentives created the market. Pirates captured. Merchants transported. Buyers demanded supply. Officials recorded transactions. Everyone acted within their interest. The result was a system that operated with precision and consistency. The island's transformation from a place of worship to a marketplace for human lives was not dramatic in appearance. Temples still stood. Pilgrims still visited. But behind the colonnades and storage facilities, the machinery of the slave trade ran daily, quietly, efficiently, and without interruption. The journey to Delos was the first test of survival for captives. Once captured, they were moved quickly from villages, towns, or battlefields to the ships that would carry them to the island. Every step was calculated. Every delay cost money. Every life lost reduced profit. Captives were often held in temporary enclosures near the coast. Wooden pens, iron chains, or stone courtyards became their waiting spaces. Food was limited. Water was rationed. Disease spread quickly in crowded conditions. Traders calculated these losses as part of business, adjusting prices to reflect expected deaths. There was no room for sympathy. Every human loss was a financial consideration. The ships themselves were not built for comfort. Captives were confined below deck in cramped conditions. Air was limited. Movement was restricted. Sanitation was minimal. If illness struck, the sick often died without treatment. For women, dangers were greater. Many were targeted for their reproductive potential or domestic skills, which increased their value. They were vulnerable during the entire journey, exposed to abuse by crews, traders, or pirates. Some ships carried hundreds at a time. The more people aboard, the higher the risk of death. Yet efficiency demanded volume. Traders preferred to transport more at once, even if it meant accepting losses. A vessel might lose a few dozen people to disease or exhaustion, but the sale of the survivors still generated profit far exceeding the cost. After several days at sea, ships arrived at Delos. The harbor was ready. Docks were prepared to unload human cargo quickly. Captives were moved directly to holding areas near the auction sites. Temporary pens, large warehouses, and open courtyards allowed for organized inspection and storage. The process was efficient, almost mechanized. Captives could arrive in groups or alone, from faraway lands or nearby coasts. Some were prisoners of war. Others were kidnapped during raids. Many had endured violence before even boarding the ship. By the time they reached Delos, they had already been stripped of freedom, security, and often family. Merchants immediately began sorting them. Age, sex, physical condition, and skills were assessed. Traders recorded information carefully. A young woman with household skills might be priced higher than a strong but unskilled laborer. Men could be assigned to fields, mines, or heavy labor. Children's futures were determined by their physical development and potential obedience. The journey to Delos was only the beginning. It was a prelude to a more organized system of evaluation, inspection, and sale. Every stage was designed to maximize efficiency, reduce risk for buyers, and ensure profit for traders. There was no consideration for the suffering endured along the way. The machinery of the market began with the journey. It began with capture. It began with transportation. The sea carried people from freedom into ownership. And once they arrived, the island was ready to transform them completely. On Delos, the auction was not a spectacle of chaos. It was a system. Every step had a purpose. Every action increased efficiency. The island's harbor, warehouses, and courtyards were designed to move captives from arrival to sale with minimal delay. The process began with inspection. Captives were examined and recorded. Age, health, physical strength, and skills were noted. Traders marked individuals from foreign lands with chalk or other symbols to indicate origin. This made it easier for buyers to assess risk. Nothing was left to chance. Everything affected price. Women were inspected carefully. Buyers wanted domestic workers, skilled artisans, and people capable of labor that matched their needs. Appearance, fitness, and potential for childbearing were considered. Buyers sometimes required physical demonstrations. For domestic tasks, women might be asked to show their hands or demonstrate simple skills. These assessments determined who would fetch a higher price. Men were evaluated differently. Strength, endurance, and training were recorded. Those who had experience in construction, farming, or combat were valued more highly. Children were examined for potential growth and obedience. Every captive was given a value based on projected usefulness. Once inspection was complete, the auction began. Brokers presented groups or individuals in an orderly manner. Buyers could walk around, ask questions, and observe closely. Bids were placed openly. Traders managed the process to ensure smooth transactions. Efficiency was the priority. Roman law protected buyers. If a captive had undisclosed defects, there was a short window during which the purchase could be reversed. Traders had to record known issues. Some captives were sold with a warning, marked as without guarantee. These individuals sold for lower prices, reflecting the uncertainty. Temporary pens and holding areas ensured that the market could handle large numbers of captives at once. Merchants and brokers stayed nearby, ready to move, sort, and process additional arrivals. Ships arrived constantly. Some days, thousands were unloaded, inspected, and sold. The island operated almost like a factory, with human lives moving through its system as efficiently as goods. The auction was not about cruelty alone. It was about structure. Policy, profit, and procedure combined to create a predictable environment. Captives were dehumanized, but every step served the market's efficiency. Traders, buyers, and officials all acted within established rules. No individual was required to act with malice. The system itself created cruelty. Delos became a hub not because people were inherently evil. It became a hub because trade, law, and politics aligned to support it. Captives arrived. They were examined, sorted, and sold. Wealth flowed to merchants. Taxes flowed to officials. Demand drove supply, and the island responded. In this way, Delos did not need chaos. It needed organization. It did not need hatred. It needed efficiency. And through this combination, a sacred island became one of the Mediterranean's most organized centers of human suffering. The auction was only the beginning of captivity. Once a buyer claimed a person, the fate of that captive was no longer in their own hands. The type of work, the conditions of life, and the treatment they would receive depended entirely on the owner. Some women were purchased for domestic work in wealthy households. These slaves cooked, cleaned, carried water, and cared for children. Some were taught new skills, and in rare cases, their lives were slightly better than those sent to fields or mines. Domestic service offered a measure of stability, but freedom did not exist. Every day was under the supervision of another person, and any act of defiance could be punished severely. Skilled women could earn higher value for their owners. Those who could read, write, weave, or provide medical knowledge were sometimes placed in more favorable positions. They might tutor children, tend to the sick, or manage certain household tasks. Their usefulness increased their price and sometimes improved the conditions of life, but it never restored freedom. Most captives, however, faced harsher realities. Men and women were sent to fields, vineyards, or mines. Life in these environments was brutal. Work began before sunrise and continued until dusk. Physical punishment was common. Shelter was minimal. Food was basic and often insufficient. Disease, exhaustion, and accidents were frequent. Survival depended on endurance, compliance, and luck. Women faced additional dangers. Pregnancy could determine their value or lead to abuse. Some owners encouraged reproduction to increase their workforce. Others forced sterilization using potions or harsh treatments. Every aspect of a woman's body was controlled for the benefit of others. Choices were never theirs. Despite the cruelty, some captives eventually gained freedom. Roman law allowed manumission, but it was rare. Freed women remained limited in rights. They could not automatically return to their previous communities. They often stayed in the households or communities of their former owners. Archaeological evidence shows some freed women managed businesses, raised families, or achieved modest independence. Many more vanished into the empire, their stories lost to history. Delos itself did not remain a slave hub forever. By the 1st century BC, attacks by foreign armies and shifts in trade routes caused the population to collapse. Warehouses and auction spaces were abandoned. Ships no longer brought human cargo in the same numbers. The system that had once been so efficient began to crumble. But the legacy remained. The organization, policies, and incentives that allowed thousands of people to become property continued elsewhere in the Mediterranean. Delos's auction blocks had disappeared, but the logic of the system endured. Captivity became routine where systems allowed it, and cruelty became standardized wherever profit demanded it. Walking through the ruins today, columns and marketplaces remain. The temples still stand. The stones remember nothing of the cries, the pain, or the losses. But the story persists. It is a record of how systems can shape human lives, how policy and profit can replace morality, and how efficiency can create suffering on a massive scale. Delos teaches that cruelty does not always require intention. It requires structure. It requires demand. And when both align, even a small island can become the center of human suffering. If you enjoy dark, untold history, subscribe because we uncover what others won't.